are fresh off a victory over the Wyoming Cowboys, and now the BYU Cougars, undefeated, are coming to town, and the Mormons are storming into Folsom Field. So they sport an incredible defense, and Colorado, led by Caden Salter and that backfield, are hoping to have an answer for it. Without further ado, I'm Liam Howard alongside Leo Rivera, Xavier McNevitz, and Ryan Donziger here on ScoBuff Sports Football Live. Let's take a look back last week to the game against Wyoming. Who impressed you in this game?
So I got to say that first half offense, they had 242 total yards. Caden Salter threw for 192 yards in that first half. They went up 21-3, and they were 63% on third down, which I haven't done all season. So I got to say that first half offense.
For me, I just think that it was Arden Walker with the safety near the end of the game. I thought that was a really big play, and again, I think the tackling has been a real struggle for CU this year defensively, and that's something that they absolutely need to get figured out. It's like they're just whiffing and whiffing. It's like me trying to play Madden on defense. Like, I'm a terrible defensive player on Madden. Like, it is absolutely insane. But luckily, he is one of the best returning players for CU. He had 4.5 sacks last season. And I'm looking for a big rest of the season as it's his last year of eligibility. Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say is what impressed me is Ralphie.
Yes, sir.
Yes, of course.
Being able to run again.
That's a great shot for sure. Arden Walker definitely had his best game of the season. But we're looking at the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to talk about the offensive line again, but more specifically Zarian McGill, who's been holding down that center position. You saw an injury to Jordan Seaton. You saw an injury to Zy Chrysler. He never fretted. That offensive line never switched up. They were still able to stay productive and move the ball down the field when they needed to. And I think it starts up front always. That unit's been doing a tremendous job this season.
I was really impressed by Caden Salter. He steps right back into the starting role, and he had a great game. 18 of 28, 304 yards passing, 3 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground, leading rusher for the team as well. No turnovers. That's a complete game of football right there, and that's something that's all the Buffs are looking for at the quarterback position. And I think that they got that. They got exactly what they were looking for out of Caden Salter. But even in the win, you got to look at the negatives. Who or what disappointed you in this game, or you just at least think you could see more of going forward?
So that run defense was pretty stout in that first half, but second half they started to allow a few yards. 233 second half yards, 17 points to a team that scored 10 points against Akron. So again, it's that defense that kind of needs to step up, at least heading into the dog days of their Big 12 schedule.
Yeah, especially since Akron was considered on some lists one of the bottom 5 teams in the FBS this year. That's a far cry from what the Big 12 will show you later on in the season. But what I think is also a big disappointment is obviously the tackling. But, the CU Buffaloes are not playing disciplined enough. Penalties-wise, we're considered the 37th most penalized team in the country this year. We have 20 penalties. And they've only called 15 against the other teams so far this season. And if our opposing teams were all considered one team, they'd be considered 84th in terms of penalties. So that's a big difference. And I just think there's so much that we could do to not have all this yardage taken away. We've had over 140 yards taken away from us this year. That's a big no-no, yeah. And I don't know how we can fix that, but we just got to play more disciplined.
For me, I think you look at the blocked field goal, and you got to talk about that special teams unit. As a PAT group, you cannot have any slippages like that. If you look across college football and just football landscape, so many games come down to a game-winning kick. When you see a weakness like that and you show a flashpoint on film, teams are going to see that and they're going to want to attack that. You best believe that teams are planning a field goal block against Colorado's unit this week because they know that they have a chance to do that. So as a unit, you need to respect Alejandro Mato, your kicker, and not take a play off, as head coach Deion Sanders said, to make sure that unit is absolutely perfect, because that is the little things that matter when it comes down to these close games, especially with a team like BYU.
Yes, I want to talk about the running backs. This is a unit that we looked to be a big contributor for Colorado this season. and they haven't really stepped up to that sort of pressure. This week, wanted to see a lot out of them. This is not the run defense that you're going to be seeing in the Big 12. And we saw some inefficiency still. Michael Welch was efficient. He averaged 11.2 yards per carry, but then he had that bad fumble. That was a bad fumble.
Yeah.
And that's a costly fumble right there. Thankfully, for the Buffaloes, the game wasn't wasn't needing him to hang on to the ball there to win, but that's also not something you want to see in those types of big games. DeKalen Taylor, only 22 yards, 2.4 yards per carry, not efficient. And then speaking on efficiency, I also want to talk about the coaching staff and how they used these running backs. This has been a reoccurring issue in these Buffaloes games to start the year. It seems like the hot hand they've not been riding the hot hand. There's a guy getting in there and getting these high averages, and then the coaching staff is not taking advantage of it. So Buffaloes would love to see a lot more of that moving forward. But what did the Buffaloes learn about themselves as a team in this game?
I mean, heading into your Big 12 schedule, I think you have to roll with one quarterback, and I think that they learned that K-Salt is the starter. We saw some vintage K-Salt, some 2023 K-Salt when Liberty went undefeated. He was 64% completion percentage, 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. That's what you want out of your starting quarterback, out of a dual-threat quarterback. He was zinging in balls. He was throwing strikes against that Wyoming defense. I think K-Salt is your guy going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to see in terms of, them being successful and what I like. But with the Caden Salter thing, I mean, sure, he had a good game, but, he cannot be scrambling around in the running outside the pocket and then taking all these sacks and not throwing the ball away. And, there was a couple plays where he threw it across the line of scrimmage. That was in the week before Wyoming. There was a lot to be desired from Caden Salter, but you also got to take into consideration that he was a player in the CUSA, which, as a conference, they're probably the worst conference in the FBS level. But Liberty was a good team. What did impress me, though, is the fact that we didn't. I mean, sure, we gave up a lot of points in the second half, but at least we didn't let up. But there's a lot that we need to do, and even if we won by 30, I think Wyoming's the type of game that we should be winning by 40.
Yeah, I think when you talk about what Colorado learned about themselves, I think it's to trust your wide receivers. Trust that you guys are able to take care of business when you get the ball in your hands, because, sometimes the scheme doesn't always run up those big plays, right? And sometimes you have to be Caden Salter working on the run, working on the scramble drill to come make some magic happen. But I think the cohesion between those wide receivers and the quarterback was something that was very apparent. 9 different players caught a ball from Caden Salter, and that is some tremendous growth from the offense that they just haven't seen in the last couple of years, especially even looking back to the Shedeur Sanders offensive days. A lot of the times it was Travis Hunter and then maybe 1 or 2 other guys who would get a bulk of the reps. Spreading the wealth of the offense around means the defense doesn't have one person that they can attack and lock up. It means you have so many different ways to attack, and I think that's going to be crucial for Colorado moving forward.
Yeah, I think if you're the Buffaloes, you like the win. You like the win, and it's good. But I think that the Buffaloes have learned they are behind schedule, as I would put it, for the Big 12 schedule. As they're entering Big 12 play, they have not exactly put together an impressive win out of the 2 wins. Delaware and Wyoming have hung with them, and that's not something that you want to see. Obviously, the 2 losses as well. This isn't something that's insurmountable. I mean, being behind schedule isn't something you can't catch up from. But when you're entering Big 12 play, that's when you would kind of like to be a little bit ahead of the curve. You'd like to know the team you have, find what's working, and know what you can go to. And just a lot of the repetitive mistakes. It's been a lot of the same mistakes being made, not much being learned from those mistakes, and them continuing to bite the Buffaloes in game after game. We've seen it with the quarterback run, letting up the quarterback run. That has been a reoccurring mistake for the Colorado Buffaloes. Not filling gaps for the defensive line and the linebackers. It has been a reoccurring nightmare for them, and I think that that's something they're going to need to catch up on now, and you're sort of playing from behind, which isn't where you'd want to be, but once again, not insurmountable by any means. But to get a closer look at that game, we're going to go to Harrison Simeon, who has a in-depth breakdown of this game against Wyoming.
Thank you, guys. I'm Harrison Simeon.
That's-
And Caden Salter had his greatest game as a Colorado Buffalo on Saturday, but there were some big reasons why. Those offensive linemen out in front of him, and we're looking at a trips left, big third down late in the first quarter. What do we got right here?
Well, let's first and foremost talk about the man deciding these calls, and that is big number 58, Zarian McGill. If you don't know that name, you need to get familiar because he's playing some great football. We have a 6-man pressure look from Wyoming here, and it seems like they're going to send the house. So what Colorado's going to do is they're going to shift their protection to the right, and they're going to fill in, I believe that's Dallin Hayden, to come and help on the protection.
Yeah, and it's a trips left, but Wyoming, in a disguise, only brings 3. So that linebacker's fallen out, and that gives Caden Salter an eternity to throw this ball, and he fits it right in the middle on a little mesh concept. Draylon Miller, big first down. Look for Draylon Miller to be incorporated even more. Very similar play early in the second quarter. What we got?
Yeah, same thing here if you look at the pressure coming up. But what Colorado does this time is they're going to come to the left. And why they do this is you want to get your biggest guys on Wyoming's biggest guys, right? So they're going to bring a 4-man slide to the left, leaving big Larry Johnson isolated up on the right, which we call big on big.
And it's a mesh concept, but there is a post over the top. And look at Caden Salter. Not phased, has all day, throws this perfectly to a Marion Miller by that goal post. Only place he really could have caught that clean. Big touchdown for Colorado to open things up later on in that game. He's celebrating. Caden Salter, big play. So next play, we got, what we got?
Yeah, we have the same exact thing. You have 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Count them, guys in the box. Colorado isn't full. They're again going to move with this, 3-man slides to the right here as they were expecting pressure to come. But again, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 guys for 4 guys with 2 extra blockers for Caden Salter.
And this is something we are very grateful for. A Colorado offensive line that can go to work. And look right here. We're going to freeze it right here because Sincere Brown, he's sitting. He's chilling. He's all good. But what does Caden Salter see? He sees Larry Johnson peeling that guy out of the protection. And he sees green grass all day up here. So what does he do? Quick little subtle point. Where are you going? Where nobody else is. This safety takes a terrible angle, not going to lie, and floats it in stride perfectly over the top. Sincere Brown reaching the second fastest top speed of anybody in college football on this touchdown. Absolute burners. He turned on the Jets. Real quick right here, what do we got?
Yeah, we have a true 4-man look here for Colorado. This is super simple. Don't got to worry about no bluff blitzes. As you can see, we have 4 of the guys shifting to the left, and Caden Salter is going to have an eternity in this pocket.
Yeah, it's perfectly played by Wyoming's secondary, a little high-low concept, but right up the seam, Joseph Williams, just toss it up to your big play guy. Joseph Williams, doing a little celebration. He's got some pixie dust for Sincere Brown in a second, and he is pixie dust for Colorado's offense this season, and that is why Caden Salter dominated this game. Back to you guys at the desk.
All right. So we are segueing back to our game this week against the BYU Cougars. That is our feature game. The Colorado Buffaloes are going to have to bring it offensively. They are taking on the number 1 defense in the country. BYU has allowed 1 touchdown all season. What does Colorado's offense have to do to break through?
So there's not really a flaw in this defense. I mean, this defense is among the best in the country, and they're among the best in the Big 12. I mean, the Buffs are just going to have to try to out-X and O this defense, and try to run the ball, but there's not much you can really do. It's a bad matchup for the Buffs.
For me, I think they got to go with short and quick passes in open space and also mix in the run there. Not like what they've been doing, but they got to run at the right times, and they got to, have a good balance to where they could be successful. But speaking to your point, the BYU Cougars have the 6th most. They're tied for the 6th most turnovers in the FBS this year, and they're also ranked number 25 in the AP poll this week. But again, they haven't really played the best of teams, like the 69-0 win over Portland State. Shout out Jordan Heron, miss you, bro. And with the rest of their schedule, what else has this BYU team really done? Playing teams like Stanford, they're one of the worst Power 4 teams. And then Eastern Carolina, they're not any slouch of an opponent, but they're still a group of 5 level. And that was the closest game that they've had this year, 34-13. So I just don't know what to expect from this BYU team, but considering they were a good team like CU last year, I think the game will at least be competitive, at least for the first half.
You know, I'm going to say something that might be a little bit of a hot take, and it might be a little bit disappointing to hear for some Colorado fans. But you got to have some trick plays, right? You got to be a little bit creative offensively. You got to do something to steal a possession, get BYU's defense on their toes. You know, whether it's off of an interception, whether if it's a change of possession, or you're coming right out of the half, I would like to see Colorado try one of those. We've seen them a couple times try a few reverses or some double passes. Joseph Williams tried one week 1 against Georgia Tech that really didn't work out, but they've said it this offseason. They've shown it that they've practiced these trick plays. Against a conference opponent in BYU at home, there is no better time to come up with your best gadget play, and I think Pat Sherman offense got to be ready to throw that one out this Saturday.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about taking a possession. I think Colorado has to do that this game if they're going to compete with BYU. I'd love to see a turnover from the secondary. We need to see not only 1, but maybe 2 from Colorado this week if they are going to gain an advantage over BYU. But that segues me to what I think is really going to beat them. I think that's going to be Colorado's run game. Their defense has to hold firm enough in order for the run game to do its thing. But I think for Colorado to actually beat this team, Caden Salter's going to have to run the heck out of the ball. These running backs are going to have to run the heck out of the ball. A little shorthanded with the injuries, but Colorado's running game is going to have to smack BYU in the mouth, and they're going to have to do it over and over and over again in order to wear them down. It's going to have to be a slugfest if they're going to win this game, and no better time to do it than at 8:15 on a Saturday night. But shifting gears back to BYU, what has made them such a powerful team to this point, and really a team that has drowned their opponents?
Well, they're a complete team defensively and offensively, but their biggest strength is their run game. They average 262 yards per game, and L.J. Martin is averaging 8.6 yards per carry. I mean, the Buffs' run defense is going to have to step up heavy against the Cougars to be able to stop this offense from getting possessions and force the true freshmen to pass the ball.
I'm a little bit worried about the Buffs' morale going into this game because not only have they struggled so far to stop containing the run this year, they're going up against a really good run team, and this, I don't know if this is the week to fix it. But going back to CU's point, they're 5-1 at Folsom Field against BYU all time, and I think that does have some promise, but other than that, it doesn't seem very hopeful for their offense. But in terms of BYU, I think their biggest player for them is none other than their junior corner, who has had 2 interceptions this season and is leading the team. But again, they're they're tied for 6th in terms of turnovers this year. And they still have a long way to go, but it's been a solid start.
Yeah, I think when you talk about this BYU team, they're well coached, first and foremost, and that translates down into the little areas. They do the little things right. They're going to be fundamentally sound with their gaps on run defense. They're going to be, checking into the correct runs on offense. They're going to be able to read your defensive front and shift to make sure they have the best possible, advantage to go against your defense. This team knows how to play in all 3 phases of the game. They're complete and they are disciplined, and that's something that Colorado is learning how to become. Coach Prime said it in the presser this morning that they're almost kind of envious of the way that BYU has been able to have that consistency and establish themselves as a physical team and a physical brand. Colorado's going to have to mimic that if they want success.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that this defense, mentioned it earlier, 1 touchdown all season. They're tied with Ohio State, averaging 5.3 points allowed per game, best in the country. And that is tough to compete with. But I think for Colorado, if you are going to compete with that, it's got to be your defense stepping up to at least be in the same realm, playing some of the same realm of defense as BYU. Not necessarily matching possession for possession. That's not exactly realistic when you're looking at a team like BYU. But I think for Colorado, they're going to need to take a possession. They're going to need to do whatever they can to keep up with this BYU defense that truly is their biggest strength. But with that being their biggest strength and this being such a strong team, is this the strongest team that Colorado will face all season?
Well, I will say that their BYU is one of the strongest teams that they will face all season, but they're also lucky that they don't face Texas Tech and they don't face Baylor, but they do face TCU. I think TCU is a stronger team than BYU. I think that they're a stronger team than BYU. Josh Hoover's been balling. That offense is sound. I mean, TCU had a 9-4 season last year, kind of under the radar, and I think that they're going to be among those best teams, like a Texas Tech, like a Baylor, the rest of the season.
For me, I think this could be one of the hardest games or like biggest blowouts CU suffers this season. But I think that overall Georgia Tech was a much better team. It's everyone's clumsy, everyone's sloppy when it's week one. But again, Georgia Tech, they played Georgia, the Bulldogs, in the 8th overtime last year. They've got like a couple solid top 20 wins last year. And then this year, beating teams like Clemson and now being ranked, I believe, number 16 in the country, they have a pretty good base level. And I think that in terms of the rest of the season, I think that's the best team on the schedule.
Yeah, that's not, a horrible take at all whatsoever. And I think you touched on a good team in TCU. But Colorado's also got Iowa State, and they also got Utah on that schedule. And I think you just look at those Big 12 teams. Those 4 are the real juggernauts on this Colorado schedule. And I think, potentially even down the line, you don't know what an ASU might turn into as well. But I wouldn't say this is the biggest game just because I feel like, it doesn't have playoff implications yet. I think it's just a little bit too early. I think when you talk about later, they're going to potentially be battling on a fringe of a bowl, right? So you're talking later in the season, you need a win on the road and potentially Manhattan. That might be your biggest game of the year.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the most difficult game, I agree with you. Like, Utah is probably my pick for the toughest game that Colorado's going to have to play, namely because of the fact that they're on the road for that
Correct.
game. They have not won in Utah for a very long time, and this is a tough Utah team. This is a better Utah team than we saw last year. This is a different Utah team. We harped a lot on them last week, and we have not seen a team like this play Colorado in a while, and they're going to that I think is going to be the toughest challenge for the Buffs later on in the season. But this game certainly, Utah's growing some good football teams out there. But segueing forward, we're going to go to Leo's restaurant this week, where I actually got to tag along and eat some great food.
Colorado's offense answered the bell last week against Wyoming.
Good catch. You should losing the focus. Yeah, I know. I lost the focus.
I'm gonna ask around and figure out if you have a favorite food spot here in Boulder, and if so, what you ordered.
Favorite food spot? I would say Clover's.
Clovers?
Yeah, I could. Triple
butter burger.
We are trying the triple butter burger and fries. We got 3 stacked patties. I don't know what these types of patties are called, but they're smashed thin. They look fire. That's a thick burger right there. That's a beefy burger, a meaty burger right there. I can see why this is up there on his list of favorites. I will say, in terms of being beefy, that's something that the Colorado defense has to step up with. Colorado has let up a lot of free yards. There have been a lot of free runners getting into open space. Colorado linebackers not filling those gaps. Same with the defensive line. So if Colorado's going to stack up against the rest of the defenses in the Big 12, going to have to be a little bit more beefy.
Going for this big triple bite. Nothing on it but the meat.
Juicy. Easy. Buttery. Exactly what you want to see from the back end of your secondary.
Especially against a team like BYU. Only allowed 1 touchdown all season. Colorado defense is going to need to step up and not necessarily match that, but it's going to have to compete. That defensive unit has been one of the worst in the Big 12 so far. So when you're stacking up one of the worst against one of the best, not a recipe for success. I like these fries.
Quick interjection, just like the referees were on Saturday versus Wyoming in that first quarter, 3 defensive pass interferences on third down against Buffaloes, 2 against Preston Hodge, and 1 against DJ McKinney. But the thing I have to say about that is just like this shake that's pretty solid, pretty thick right here, Buffs need to stay solid with their approach to stopping the pass game as they did against Wyoming if they want to get a win against BYU.
Well, the meat and cheese of the burger is obviously the most important part, and the trenches are going to be the most important part of Colorado's success against BYU. If they can handle business there, they'll be able to come out and get a W.
We ate, left nothing on the plate, per usual. Thank you so much, Culvers. We'll see you all next week.
All right. That was a heck of a burger. I cannot lie. I think that was one of the better recommendations of the season. But looking forward in the season, we're going to look to the Big 12 as a whole, starting off with the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who pulled out a huge win this past week over Utah. Did Texas Tech cement themselves as the best team in the Big 12 with that win?
I mean, they shut down that Utah run and Devin Dampier. I mean, with the best offensive line in college football, in my humble opinion. And their offense kept cooking. I mean, they had 311 passing yards, 173 rushing yards. So I would say, yes, they're the team to beat in the Big 12.
I think there isn't much other teams in the Big 12 that could really compete with them. I mean, they also had a really good season last year. And the fact that they beat them by more than 20 points, absolutely, that just means you showed dominance, you showed strength, and that's exactly what you need to do to win Big 12 football games when it's such a tight conference.
I love this performance of the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I did pick them last week on this show, like I said, to come out and, prove they are the better team against Utah, and I thought they did that. And you look specifically, like you mentioned, Xavier, with their ability to shut down Utah's offense. I think that was such a big talking point coming in was, this is going to be 2 juggernaut teams and probably a high-scoring game. It was high-scoring for Texas Tech, but, you look at their ability just to be so physical, so nasty in the trenches. You saw all that firepower in the beef. I mean, that Big 12 media days, Xavier, I know you remember seeing those Red Raider D linemen walking through.
That oil money.
That oil money. We don't keep talking about it, but as of now, I think, yes, undoubtedly Texas Tech is the best team in this conference.
Yeah, I like the word you used, prove. I don't think this team is necessarily, this game cements them as the best team for the rest of the season, but until proven otherwise,
correct,
this is their conference. This is Texas Tech's conference until someone comes and takes it from their hands, and that's going to be tough to do. They're a complete team. We've seen the air raid offense work for Texas Tech for years, and it's not slowing down. And we've seen that pass rush. I think this week really showed that pass rush to the world. This week was where that pass rush kind of came onto the scene, showed that they're scary, and showed that Texas Tech is a scary team in the Big 12. But let's look at the polar opposite. Who is the worst team in the Big 12 right now?
I mean, it's those Cowboys in Stillwater. I mean, they just fired Mike Gundy today. They lost to Tulsa. It's rough sledding for the Oklahoma State Cowboys.
I mean, they did go winless, I believe, last year in conference play. That's pretty tough, but I do think it's Kansas State, especially because they were expected to be a lot better, that there was even this growing sense, throughout the Manhattan community, throughout, the program, that they're not doing well. They need to be doing better, but losing by 3 to North Dakota, or winning by 3 to North Dakota, and they were down the entire game until less than a minute to go. And considering they lost to Army could be a sneaky team at some points. I think they're the worst in this conference, and I don't see really any other reason for that. After the fact that they're 1-3 right now, you can't really beat that, and yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of low-hanging fruit, but it's the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Yeah. I mean, you're 3 games into the season. You've already fired your head coach. I think that's all you have to say, and it's reflective. And I think even coming into the season, Coach Gundy was very adamant about that, especially at Big 12 Media Days, that this team is just not good. Yeah. They lost more than 60% of their roster, this offseason, whether it be, transfer. I guess it's all transfer portal, but just with no retention, no program, no idea of what your quarterback's going to be, no identity. It's hard to win. It's hard to win football games, and I think as good as a coach as Coach Gundy was and is, I'm still gonna, show some respect to the legend. You got to show some respect. I think it was time for them to separate, and it was time for them to split ways.
Yeah, I like the unique take on Kansas State. I think it's good to bring them to the table, especially since I'm still so angry about them for making me look like a fool on my conference championship pick. But I got to go Oklahoma State. I mean, this team is a rebuild. This is the start of a rebuild, and it came crashing down quickly. I think we're still seeing the hangover from that 2021 Big 12 championship loss. You see that at that moment, that 1 yard short of the goal line moment. That's been the turning point for this program, and it's been down ever since then. It's been straight down since that definitive moment, and this is really just rock bottom. I mean, 69-3 against Oregon. Oregon is a great team, don't get me wrong, but that's the score you see a team like that put up against an FCS school. I mean, as a matter of fact, I believe it was Montana State that actually played better against the Oregon Ducks this season than Oklahoma State did, and that's a Power 4 team getting smacked around like an FCS school.
Montana State, though, is national championship winning team at the FCS level.
But I mean,
it's a far cry from Power 4.
Yeah, exactly. At the same time, we're talking Power 4 football and FCS football. It's just a completely different ball game
for sure.
But one other team that has been that was expected to kind of be around with the Oklahoma States of the world this year, but has not. UCF. Are they a legit team this year?
I mean, that defense is what's legit. I mean, they allow the fifth least yards and the second least yards, or in the second least points per game in the conference, and their offense is capable. I mean, they average the six most yards per game. I mean, the Golden Knights are a solid team, and honestly, a surprise with Scott Frost returning there after winning the Natty, quote unquote.
Yeah, winning the Natty.
I mean, it's so cool and so good to have him back, Scott Frost back, but UCF historically, I mean, they're the only team to move up from Division III to Division I, let alone Power 4 conference football, and they've had ups and downs throughout their history. But this year, I mean, it could be a turning point. I wouldn't say that they're back, but I say that they could be a solid contender of the Big 12. I mean, only beating Jacksonville State by 7 is kind of a little bit of a scarier thing, but I mean, that was week 1 of their season. But on the other hand, being Bill Belichick 34-9, that's a huge deal because Bill Belichick, a very good historic coach at the NFL level, and the fact that he's so successful, being that kind of guy like that by multiple possessions is a huge deal.
Yeah, I think legit is a vague term, right? Because legit in what terms? Legit means you're going to be competing in every game, or legit and you're going to be competing for a Big 12 championship? Because there are two very different standards to look at when you're measuring football success. But as for UCF, I just don't know if they've had enough of a rigorous schedule to really tell. I'm not sure how convinced I am with UNC and Bill Belichick of how quality that team is. It's been rough selling for that patch. Of course, you had the really close game against Jackson State as well. And, it just seems very interesting. I think time's going to tell more with this UCF team. But I think as of now, they definitely got to get their respect. You've been taking care of business. You've been winning some games. I, for one, am one person who've, predicted them to lose a couple times now. So you got to give credit to the wins.
Yeah, I think that this is a team that you have to give credit to their wins. And they're playing a Scott Frost brand of football right now, which is winning when you're supposed to win. Mm-hmm. And taking care of those games you're supposed to take care of. We didn't really see that type of Scott Frost in Nebraska, but now we shift back to UCF. When you look at his UCF days, that was how they rolled. Mm-hmm. That was how this team made their money. This team made their money winning the games they were supposed to win by how much they were supposed to win them. They stepped up to the task. Now, so far, don't really know what to think of with their schedule.
Yeah.
And obviously, you see a game like the Jacksonville State game where you're like, that's not super. That doesn't raise a lot of confidence in me. That game also, like you mentioned, first game of the season, massive rain delay in that game. That certainly throws off the team. So I think that UCF right now is good. I think that they are good, and looking back at Texas Tech, until proven otherwise, their defense has stepped up, offense has stepped up where they've needed to. Taven Jackson has moved into that role and answered the call incredibly well. But I think that it will stand to see what teams they come up against later in the Big 12 schedule. But finally, let's look at Kansas State really briefly. Do they bounce back after the bye week?
Nope. I mean, the Golden Knights are rolling. I believe in the Golden Knights personally, right? But it might be another thing with UNC versus UCF. Is Kansas State just that bad? Is UNC just that bad, or is UCF actually a solid squad? But I do not think that K-State bounces back. And part of the reason is because they just don't have an identity. Offensively, they can't pass the ball, they can't run the ball, and their defense stinks. I mean, for lack of a better term, their defense is terrible.
For me, I think that Kansas State just doesn't have the time to bounce back, especially with how competitive the Big 12 will be this year, and the fact that most teams are playing a remainder of their schedule or a majority of the remainder of their schedule against Big 12 teams, and I just think that it's too close where they could actually come back, and the fact that their morale is already low and the fact that they haven't done well already just screams disaster for me, to say the least. And I don't know if they're going to have to make some changes at the head coaching level or what's going to happen there this offseason, but it'll be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm not going to beat the dead horse. I don't see a scenario where Kansas State's able to come around and turn the season around. It's too far gone, especially when you talk about already having, conference losses in there. That sucks. And I just, realistically, I don't see this team being able to get off the ground.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that, we said the same exact thing about Florida State last season. They had their bye week and coming back from Ireland, and we're like, okay, this is where it gets going. And then it came out, and it was just the same team for the rest of the season. I feel like Kansas State is falling into that same boat.
Yeah.
They are showing a lot of the same mistakes. Defense stinks, like you said. The run game that was supposed to be their brand this season is non-existent. They are inefficient, sloppy, and I think that no bye week, singularly in the middle of a season, is going to fix that. But to lift up the spirits a little bit more after talking about some bad football, let's look at some of the fun sides of football with Tailgate Takeover. Let's see how people were getting ready for the game against Wyoming. To go to Pick'ems. I'm not sure what happened, but we're gonna go to our
Little technical difficulties.
yeah. So we're gonna go on to Pick'ems. Let's take a look at our first game, TCU against Arizona State. Number 24 TCU. Who do you got taking this game?
I mean, TCU, besides Texas Tech, has one of the best offenses in the Big 12. Arizona State allows about 300 yards per game. I think TCU will cover the 2.5-point spread as they are favored, and I think they win by a touchdown.
I think that TCU is obviously the better team. I mean, I think that Arizona State hasn't had a lot of returning production outside of Sam Leavitt. And I think they'll be an above average this year, but I still just don't think they'll be anywhere close to what they were last year, especially without Kim Scadby, which is, he did have a good week this last week. But moving on, I think it's an obvious TCU win, probably by 10 to 14 points.
You know what? I'm going to disagree with you all here, and I'm going to come and pull the oddball. I think Arizona State's actually going to be able to come in and get this upset, right? I think they're a team that's, going to be able to kind of rekindle that feeling of last year of being the underdog, of being overlooked, of being underrated. Because it seems so quickly, people forget that Sam Leavitt and Kelly Dillingham are still there and still together. I think anytime you have, correct, former Buff. Anytime you have a quarterback head coach duo that's retained from a year, that is the most growth. And they've had those growing pains, but a big win against Baylor is going to boost them. I think, let's not underestimate how good of a team the Baylor Bears are. And to be able to come out and show you're able to play 4 quarters, able to fight through some adversity, and get a statement win like that, I like the way this Arizona State team's playing. I think they're going to come in and get the upset.
I like the way that they're playing, too. I think that TCU brings a very fun matchup. This is good TV right here. This is a game that you call good TV. 2 offenses that are going to chuck the heck out of the ball for 4 straight quarters. This game's going to be high scoring. Josh Hoover has been one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's still not talked about somehow. 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's got this offense rolling. This is reminding me of this TCU team that we saw go to the national championship. That's how that was their brand of football. I'm going to go ahead and take TCU to take down Arizona State, just outlasting them by maybe a possession or so. But next we're going to look to the Houston Cougars taking on the Oregon State Beavers. This one's going to be taking place at Oregon State.
Straightforward pick for me. I got the Houston Cougars. Their run game is stout with Dean Connors. That Wegman and Tanner Kozoil connection is buzzing. I mean, Houston Cougars by at least 3 possessions.
Yeah, same thing with me. I just don't see a lot of inspired football outside of this Oregon State team. And again, I wish that Oregon State was still a good team at the Pac-12 level, but things just aren't the same anymore. And obviously, Houston has looked good against Colorado and looked good against other teams this year. I think they have a huge advantage, and it'll really be a precursor to see what happens with the rest of Houston's season.
I got Houston as well, and I think it's because of their defense. These guys thump. They know how to contain. They've seen, a variety of offenses already where you have, dual threat type players and then you have true pocket passes. So they know how to play to the looks and use their strengths. And I think when you have a run game like they do that you can fall back on and rely on when the passing game is not working so well, it gives you, comfortability to be able to go out and play with anyone. And I think when you have a good defense, good run game, you can come out and play with anyone. Oregon State, I'm a little more skeptical on their, defense or run game, just to say the least, being nice about it. But I think Houston comes out and gets it done.
I think this is one of those games that can be sneaky. Oregon State, I think, is a team that obviously has been below expectations, but they have the talent on the roster.
They do.
If with college football, that can come to the surface at any point. But with that said, though, Houston, they proved it against Colorado. This is a more complete team than it might look. Connor Wigman has been coming into his own with this team. This is his spot, not Texas A&M. This is like when his career is over, you're going to think about Connor Wigman as a Houston quarterback, and this team has this team has looked good. Oregon State has really fallen short of expectations. Malik Murphy, especially. I mean, this is a guy who I thought was a sleeper quarterback in this conference. 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions to start the season. Not what you want to see. I don't think that's going to stack up against the Cougars, so I'm going to take Houston. Next up, though, we move to the Kansas Jayhawks taking on the Cincinnati Bearcats. This is going to be a very interesting sort of middle of the Big 12 matchup.
So I think it's going to be an offensive shootout. That Kansas defense is legit, but that Cincy offense, I'm in love, right? I mean, they have 5 receivers that have over 100 yards receiving, and they have a top 5 passing offense in the Big 12. I think Cincy is going to take it in a close game by a field goal or a touchdown.
I say that Kansas will win this game. I mean, I think the home field advantage will actually play into effect in this game, especially that they're still getting used to the refurbished stadium in Lawrence, and the fact that Daniels isn't hurt yet. I think that'll also play big dividends, but I still think this will be probably the closest game in the Big 12 this week. And I think there's a lot of exciting Big 12 action this week, but this could be up there in the top 3 matchups of the week in the Big 12, and I'm excited for it, to say the least.
You're 100% right on this being one of the best possible matches, because to me it was a coin flip, right? And a lot of times when I come into these games and I think it's personally a coin flip, I look at the quarterbacks. All right, you have Brendan Sorsby, you have Jalen Daniels, who were both there last season as well. These guys have respect in their locker rooms. They have the command. But much like you, Liam Howard, I like that man, Jalen Daniels.
Yeah, Jalen Daniels, I've harped on him a lot this season. So I'm actually going to shift away. Like I like this game as a shootout. I think that's the first thing that this screams when you look at it on paper. But I actually want to talk about the Kansas defense. You look at that Missouri game. The Missouri game, they gave up a considerable amount of yardage. It cost them the game, and they weren't really able to stop Mizzou. But Bo Prabula has led that offense really well. That's a good offense. That's one of the best offenses in the SEC. Not being talked about that way, but I think it really should. You look at the other 3 games that Kansas has played. They've allowed 3 combined touchdowns in those 3 games. That's a pretty good defense, and that's a defense that I think is going to stack up well against Cincinnati. And if you're looking at a game that is a shootout, we got the quarterback matchup, Jalen Daniels, Brendan Sorsby, which is really what it's going to come down to. You need a defense to step up, create a turnover. I think Kansas is going to get that done. And then, of course, that offense that I have talked so much about. But then we move to a game we've already talked about a little bit, the UCF Knights traveling to Manhattan to take on the Kansas State Wildcats.
I said it earlier, K-State has no identity. They can't run the ball, they can't pass the ball. Defense stinks, right? I mean, UCF, I gave them their respect and credit earlier. I think they're rolling. I think they're good. I think their defense will shut down K-State's offense. Because they have no identity, I think UCF takes it.
UCF, I think they're going to come out and play some inspired football. Also, I just think that the jolt that this 3-0 start to the season has gave them, I think will play big dividends here. And they'll go right after quarterback Avery Johnson. And to be quite frank, I don't think this will be a close game whatsoever. And UCF, I just think the passion is there where it seems to me like K-State just doesn't want to be there in a way. Yeah. And I think I'll have K-State losing 27-0.
Bold prediction there on the shutout. I do see, a scenario where this game is actually a lot closer than that, unfortunately, Ryan. And I think it's just because, Avery Johnson's still,
elite quarterback.
A good quarterback, right? He hasn't played like an elite quarterback, but he's still a good quarterback regardless, right? He's proven that last year. And I think as this team tries to rebuild itself, obviously they're coming off the bye. They've had more time to prepare and study and learn their opponent. So I think this is going to make this game close. But I can't pick against Scott Frost and the UCF Knights and what they've been doing this season and the victories they've been able to, achieve. So go ahead and give me the Knights.
Yeah, I think that Kansas State, like you said, no identity right now, and we've seen a lot of miscommunications stem from that. UCF, their defense has been good because they've thrived on communications, or miscommunications, I should say, and that is exactly what Kansas State is going to hand to them, I feel like. And this UCF team, they believe. They're rallying behind Scott Frost right now. They believe in this team. Whether or not you don't want to tell them right now that their 3 wins have not been proving anything.
Yep.
They would heavily disagree with you. They would say that these 3 wins have proven that this team is legit. This team is here to compete with anybody, and I think that they're going to take that mentality right into Manhattan and pick up a victory. Then we move on to quite the interesting offensive battle to look at. Number 14, Iowa State taking on Arizona.
This game is going to be, once again, another offensive shootout, an offensive just slobber knocker. That Cyclone offense is legit, but that Arizona defense is also nice. I mean, they allow the second least yards per game in the Big 12. I think that the Cyclones will take it in a close game in an offensive shootout.
For me, I used to go to the U of A, and they have a lot of great sports culture there, but I still think that the misusage of $240 million from their old athletic director is a huge problem, and I think it's still stunting their growth. Ever since Jed Fish left the team, after they went to the Alamo Bowl and won 8 or 9 games in a row, I just don't see a way that Iowa State doesn't win this game. And I think, quite frankly, Iowa State is probably the biggest competitor outside of Texas Tech in the Big 12 right now. And the fact that Arizona has had pretty simple games so far this season. You look at Weber State, you look at Hawaii. I mean, and then K-State, that was still pretty close, even though Kansas State didn't really have an identity. But you also got to take into the fact they have a really good quarterback in Noah Fafita who just didn't look the same last season under a new coach. And I hate to say it, but is it possible he's a system quarterback? Maybe, but obviously you don't have Ted McMillan anymore. You don't have Jacob Manu. I just don't see a way that Arizona can win this game, quite frankly. I think it's Iowa State as well.
Yeah, I don't think you got to, look at this one too hard. I think it's a ranked team versus an unranked team first and foremost, but Iowa State's at home. And when you talk about the Cyclones fan base, this is probably one of the top 3 in the Big 12. And that's up for debate because they travel well. But especially when they're at home, they're going to pack that stadium out. The Cyclones fans are going to be rocking. And when you talk about these elements, especially for a quarterback, like you said, that's had some, inconsistencies coming into this year, it creates, plenty of room for mistake. Give me the Cyclones.
Iowa State is a team that I actually like. I like their offense a lot. I like what this program is building. But to me, here's the butt I'm about to throw in here. They look beatable to me. I like this team, but the 14 next to their name is a little questionable to me. I picked Arkansas State to beat them, which I got about laughed off this set when I did that. They lost that game by a touchdown, and it came down to a last. And they had the ball. It was a last-second turnover, but they were set up to go win that game. And you talk about the other teams that they've defeated. You look at like Kansas State. That win, we now know that's not the most, in my mind at least, that's not the most impressive win over that team by 3. South Dakota, they did blow that team out, but it's an FCS school. It's kind of what you would expect. Iowa only beating that team by 3. I'm not super high
Robbery.
on them either. But I think with Arizona, that's a team that can hurt you in a lot of ways. I like Noah Fafita. Their backfield is really good this season. That's not something Arizona has sported in a while. Ismail Mahdi has emerged. He was the Texas State transfer, really good there. 189 yards against Kansas State. He was really the fire for that team in that game. So I'm going to go ahead and take Arizona to take down Iowa State. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe if Iowa State wins this game, I'll finally start believing in them. But now we move on to our feature game of the week. We have the number 25 BYU Cougars coming to Boulder to take on the Colorado Buffaloes. What do you got?
It's a terrible matchup for CU. BYU is a complete team. They have a really strong defense, a really strong run game. This Colorado offense is still figuring it out, and it's going to be hard for them to figure it out against this BYU defense. And this Colorado run defense is also still figuring it out, and it's going to be hard to figure it out against this BYU run game. Unfortunately, it's the BYU Cougars by a couple touchdowns, but if the Buffs do keep it close, I don't think all hope is lost for their Big 12 schedule.
I don't think that the CU Buffs really stand a chance, but I could be surprised, and they can do some pretty cool things, and I know they have the talent there, and I know they have the coaching capability, but with Pat Shurmur calling offensive plays, I don't think that they could really, truly run the ball efficiently like they're supposed to. They don't call the right plays at the right times. They don't call the right passes at the right time. They just need to mix it up more and also call the right plays at the right time. And then for the defense, they can't seem to get tackles, and that's a huge problem. And defensive alignment wise, I also think that's an issue because they're not going to be able to get to the running back whatsoever. And BYU was a very good team last year, also 7-2 in the Big 12, and which was a 4-way tie for first place in the Big 12 last year with Colorado, Arizona State, and Iowa State. I am sorry to say, but Colorado also with the inconsistency of Caden Salter, that's a problem because Salter is just running around too much, kind of like Shador Sanders would last year. He needs to get the ball off sooner, and the fact that the offensive line, although much improved, it still has the fact that they're not able to hold blocks long enough, and he's on his back too quickly or running out of the pocket too quickly.
You know, I think this BYU team comes in with a lot of confidence. They're supreme at what they do. They have a dominant defense. They have a dominant running game. And they put the absolute smacking on the Colorado Buffaloes in that bowl game. Let's not forget the Alamo. Remember the Alamo Bowl. And when you're the Colorado Buffaloes, you're going to be remembering that all week. When you go to bed, when you're a player like Jordan Seaton or Arden Walker, who was on this team a year ago, you close your eyes, you're seeing that thumping that you got in Texas, and you are peed off about it. And I think at home, 8-15, behind Ralphie 7, who Colorado is undefeated when Ralphie 7 runs, all right, at home, I think the Buffaloes are going to be able to come in, shock the world, shock the Storm and Mormons, and get the dub at home.
But to bring to your point, actually, CU is actually 4-3 when a new Ralphie runs out. And the only 3 games they lost was against A&M and Oregon, I believe. Yeah. It was Texas. It was a loss against CSU and a loss against A&M. So, no, my bad. It was a loss against Texas. So, there's some life there. I mean, they're 4-3 when having him run out in the first place.
Undefeated, though, when Ralphie 7 comes out.
Undefeated with Ralphie 7.
Yep.
I think BYU, the best word to describe them when comparing them to Colorado is kryptonite. This is a matchup nightmare for Colorado, where Colorado's weak, BYU is strong, and that is not usually a recipe for success. Like we said, it's going to be catch-up. If Colorado wants to win this game, it's going to be catch-up. They're going to need to make turnover. They're going to need to steal possessions away. They're going to need to create turnovers, and they are going to need to play catch-up on this team. But BYU sports a quarterback wearing the number 47. That personally, as a football fan, that hurts my soul. 47 as a quarterback? What are we talking about? You know what 47 stands for? The 4 is the number of interceptions he's going to throw. 7 is the total turnovers for the BYU offense. And that right there is how Colorado is going to come back into this game and take it by a million. So, on that note, thank you for joining us for ScoBuff Sports Football Live. I'm Liam Howard alongside Leo, Ryan, and Xavier. Thank you for joining us. You heard it here first.